So, Mr. Michael, welcome back.
Mr. Norris.
As some girl shouted out during the Unplugged the other night, welcome back. And I wonder if you consider this, as much as I guess the press treated it, as the comeback for George Michael this year. Is it a comeback, do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously playing the show was like a comeback because it was the first show I'd played in 3 years. But in terms of music, I don't really consider it a comeback in the sense that everywhere in the world but America, I had some very successful projects in between the last big album and now. And it's only really in America that it's considered a real comeback.
Talking about America, is there a particular problem that you've got in terms of your stance with? Are you less interested in how things are going in the States at this point?
No, I'm not less interested in how things are going. I think obviously you want to reach the States because it's such a mass of people. I always thought I wanted to be very successful in America, and then Faith happened. And I had been very successful up until then, but then suddenly I realised what it was like to be very successful in America, you know, to be the latest hot thing in America. And it was the first time I'd been on my own. I was working on my own in that sense. I'd always had Andrew to kind of muck about with before. And it suddenly seemed extremely lonely and extremely high pressure. And at the end of Faith, I decided that in order to kind of get a rein on my life again, I wanted to stop doing certain things.
As I understood it, America was sort of at the center of your initial problems and dissatisfaction with Sony and the way they were handling not only Listen Without Prejudice, but just you in general as an artist.
Yeah, it was very much very much a clash of cultures, really. As I was saying, you know, I was very confused, very unhappy at the end of the whole Faith thing, and the stance that I took in order to try and redress the balance in my own life was not offensive. It may not have been ideal for the Sony executives in the UK and in the rest of the world. Far from ideal, I'm sure. You know, you have an artist that goes out and sells 15 million albums, makes the videos, does the tour, does everything, and then suddenly says, "No, I just want to sit in my room." You know, they're not really going to be thrilled about it. But in America, there was definitely a door that shut the minute I said that, and that was really what the court case was about. Was about finally realising that I didn't have control of my own career, because when I wanted to do something that didn't gel with the record company's ideas of doing things, it just didn't happen, and that was really what I went to court about.
And lest we misquote you, you actually never vowed to not record again if things didn't go your way with Sony, but that would have been difficult. Maintaining after the decision went the other way, it would have been difficult to maintain a relationship with them, I'd imagine.
Oh my God, I mean, absolutely. I was quite amazed. I think it was almost like it was kind of a formality, but they did have to actually kind of, after the court case was finished and I'd lost, and not just lost, I lost completely. I mean, I lost on everything, every count. They then called up and, you know, kind of said, well, can't we patch things up, kind of thing, but I knew in reality that was like a formality, they had to do that. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the whole thing was a complete waste of time. You know, it took years out of my career and was an embarrassment, I would imagine, to Sony. It was all totally unnecessary. You know, at the end of the day, we came up with the same thing. They sold my contract to someone else. Why couldn't they have just done that and saved us all time and trouble, you know?
Were you concerned about, you know, sort of, it's probably a hard thing to gauge when you're in the middle of something like that, what the public perception of what you're going through is. But I would imagine that there were people there who looked at George Michael and the success and this and that, and they hear things like professional slavery. Well, what is he talking about, slavery, you know? Prince had a similar situation with writing Slave on you know.
Yeah, I know. I must admit, no, to be really honest, I have to be really honest, much as I'm a great admirer of Prince's, I was kind of pissed off about that, because we had two totally different situations going on. I had a situation where I was bound to a piece of paper I signed when I was 18. I called it professional slavery because I knew it was a good soundbite, for God's sake. I knew it was going to get out there. It was a good soundbite. But of course, you can be an incredibly, ludicrously wealthy slave, but at the end of the day, if you can't work anywhere else and you can't leave your boss or tell him to get lost, you know, you're a slave. It doesn't matter how well you're paid.
With all things considered, it was worth it going through all this litigation and taking Sony to?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely worth it. It was a terrible waste of time, but I had absolutely no choice. Of course, in between, Sony have also become the most amazing record company for everybody that's on them. I mean, their chart success has never been anything like it is now, and that's quite ironic. But it wasn't about that. You know, what it was about was just, you know, that I was working with people who didn't really want to work with me. And I'd never been in that position before, and luckily now I'm not.
What kind of a personal toll did this take when it was in the low point of this whole litigation? Were you creatively, I understand it was a tough time for you. Were you able to write? Was recording out of the question?
Well, I mean, in reality, the truth is that all the time that all the legal stuff was going on, I had other problems in my life that far overshadowed the legal problems. So I was not losing any sleep over this court case. I had other things going on, and creatively I was stifled in so many ways.
Was it the kind of thing that was getting you frustrated, depressed? Were you out getting drunk every night and because of this thing, or because, as you said, there were other things you were going through that took precedence? I
mean, to be honest with you, I was probably most out of control in any kind of sense like that during the whole faith thing. I mean, faith was far more difficult to deal with than not working. Right. You know, in reality, I mean, it was a typical thing. You're out on the road for 10 months. You end up, you know, I was taking drugs. I was doing a lot of things that I hadn't expected to be doing.
Looking for fast love.
Absolutely looking for fast love. I didn't have any time. Sorry. But yeah, I think that no, I didn't go into any deep depression. I went into deep depressions over various things, but actually, in fact, I learned a lot of very, very incredibly important lessons in the last 4 or 5 years. Things that have left me feeling so much better about myself. I have this really strange feeling that my career almost takes care of itself, that it's supposed to happen. I always felt that there was a path that would lead me to this point. I didn't know whether it would mean winning or losing in court. I really didn't know. I didn't know whether it would take 2 years or whether it would take 5 years. I just had this complete feeling that that I was going to be able to get out there and make music for people again. And I think that's why I didn't worry about it so much. You know, I just have this if there's an equivalent of a guardian angel that's got, like, you know, a copy of Q in its pocket. It's kind of that's the way I feel.
You said a couple of minutes ago that you are at a more prolific point artistically than you've been in some time.
I think where my prolific, where I'm going to kind of aim my output is, for the moment, it's going to be in B-sides. I'm going to try and make EPs out of as many of the singles as I can from older, so that people are getting constantly some new material, you know. I will be doing some shows next year, but I don't tour more, and I feel bad about it because people do really want to see me. But at the end of the day, for the sake of somebody in... I find touring a very lonely, isolating experience. It's not a matter of just being lazy. I find it a very lonely experience. And I don't like being surrounded constantly, day after day, by people who are working for me and who I'm in a position of power with, really. I find that very uncomfortable. So, but in order for me to reach that German fan or that Japanese fan or whatever, I have to go through that for however many months of doing something which is really not something that... It's something that I find really hard to do.
You alluded to some dates next year. Can you say anything more about that? I know you've said many times you're never going to do a tour on the scale of Faith, and maybe for the reasons you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, for exactly those reasons. Right. For exactly those reasons. I love to sing. Right. I hate to tour. Right. You know, I love to sing. I love being up there. I can be George Michael, inverted commas, for a couple of nights, a couple of hours in the evening, and have a great time, do a great job, give people what they want, get what I want. But the rest of the day is a nightmare for me. Mm-hmm. You know, the being George Michael off stage for the rest of the day is a nightmare. I'm a real homebody. I'd much rather be taking my dog for a walk, or, you know, be with friends. It's just, it's not a matter of laziness, it's a matter of feeling I'm somewhere I don't belong. I feel like I don't belong out there being this professional person going around selling his wares, you know. For instance, today in this building, everyone will treat me as George Michael. And on Friday at the Unplugged, everybody treated me as George Michael, which is a very strange thing to be treated as, if you know what it's like to live it. You know, it's it doesn't feel like me at all. It feels like something I put on, and it does the job of communicating the music that I want to make, and then I take it off again. And I like that. I like being able to stay away from the professional character.
Does it make you sorry you ever took on the character to begin with?
No, because at the end of the day, I'm very happy with where I've ended up. You know, so you really can't. I mean, I think at any point in life, I mean, life is short. You have to just kind of get on with it. And I think at any point in life, if you're happy with where you are, then you can't complain about the way you got there. You know.